For 7 years, someone had been saving Mrs. Honoria Blake from ruin, and she had never once discovered who, until the afternoon she followed the money and found it led to the Duke of Ravenhurst. It had begun the winter her husband died. Honoria had been left a widow at 24, with a small child and a mountain of debts she had not known her charming feckless husband had accumulated, and no family living, and no prospects but the genteel slow starvation that awaits a penniless widow in a hard world. She had braced herself to lose everything, the little house, her respectability, her child's future, and had been doing the desperate arithmetic of survival when the first miracle happened. Her husband's largest debt, the one that would have taken the house, was simply, quietly paid. By whom, the creditor would not or could not say. A gentleman's agent, an anonymous arrangement, the debt discharged and no name given. Honoria had wept with relief and puzzled over it for weeks, and finally concluded it must have been some old friend of her husband's, discharging a private obligation, and had been too desperately grateful to question a rescue. But it had not stopped. Over the 7 years since, again and again, at exactly the worst moments, when the money ran out, when illness came, when her son needed schooling she could not afford, when disaster loomed, help had arrived, anonymously, from nowhere. A physician's bill mysteriously settled the winter her son had the fever. A place at a good school appearing, fully paid, by a bequest, no lawyer could quite explain, exactly when her boy was old enough to need it. Her modest rent, in a lean year, quietly reduced by a landlord who muttered something about an arrangement and would say no more. Small sums arriving in the post at desperate moments, in plain wrappers, with no card. For 7 years, Honoria Blake had been shepherded through every crisis by an invisible hand, a guardian she could not name, a benefactor who wanted, apparently, nothing, not thanks, not recognition, not even to be known, and who had, quietly and anonymously, stood between her and ruin for the whole of her widowhood. She had tried, over the years, to discover who. It had become, in a way, the great mystery of her life. She had questioned creditors and landlords and lawyers, and met always the same wall of discretion, a gentleman who wished to remain unknown. "Madam, I am not at liberty to say." She had run through every possibility. Her husband's friends. None had the means or the constancy. Distant relations. She had none. Some charity. Too personal. Too precisely timed. And she had never solved it, and had come, over 7 years, to think of her invisible benefactor with a complicated tenderness. This unknown someone who had watched over her and her son so faithfully, so anonymously, asking nothing, for so long, that she had begun to feel she loved him, whoever he was, this guardian she could not name. There was one night, 3 years into her widowhood, that Honoria always remembered when she thought of her invisible guardian, the night that turned her puzzlement into something like love for a man she could not name. Her son had taken the fever, badly, dangerously, the kind of fever that killed children, and the physician had come, and had said the boy might yet be saved, but that it would require things Honoria could not afford. A particular medicine, dear and hard to get, a nurse to sit the nights she could not sit alone, fuel to keep the sick room warm through a bitter week. And Honoria had sat by her burning child with empty hands and an emptier purse, and had known, with a mother's despair, that she could not buy the things that might save him, that her poverty might cost her son his life, and had prayed the desperate prayers of a parent with nothing. And in the morning the things had come. The medicine, the exact dear medicine the physician had named, delivered, paid for, by an apothecary, who would say only that the account was settled. A nurse, engaged and paid, arriving at the door with her bag, sent by the family's friend, though Honoria had no family and no friend with the means. Fuel, a whole winter's worth, carted to her door by a coalman who touched his cap and said it was all seen to. Everything the physician had said her son needed, everything her poverty had put beyond reach, all of it, arriving in the gray dawn, paid for by an invisible hand, exactly when the need was most desperate and most impossible to meet. Her son lived. The fever broke, 3 nights later, in a warm sick room, under a paid nurse's care, with the dear medicine in him. And Honoria understood, holding her living child, that he lived because someone she could not name had reached into her darkest hour and paid for his life, asking nothing, wanting not even to be thanked. And something happened in her that night that went beyond gratitude. She came to love her invisible guardian, whoever he was, with the fierce, helpless love a mother bears anyone who saves her child. She did not know his name. She did not know his face. She knew only that when her son was dying and she had nothing, a hand had reached out of the dark and paid for his life, and vanished without a word. And she thought, sitting by her sleeping healing boy in the warm room some stranger's money had heated, that she would love that stranger to the end of her life, whoever he was, and pray for him nightly, and never stop wondering who could love her and her fatherless son so much as to save them so completely, and ask so utterly nothing in return. She had wondered for 4 more years after that, and never guessed, never once imagined it could be the grave young man from a single season, a decade gone, whom she had thought had forgotten her, and who had in fact been sitting up over her son's fever from a distance, as anxiously as she, paying in the dark for a child that was not his, to save a woman he had loved and lost and could not stop loving. When at last she learned it was he, that long ago night came back to her whole, and she understood that she had loved him without knowing it since the night he saved her son, that her nameless guardian and her almost love had been one man all along, and that she had been, without ever suspecting it, cherished through the whole of her widowhood by the one person in the world who had loved her longest. And then, in the 7th year, she solved it, by accident, following a thread of one payment further than the discreet agents had expected anyone to follow, and the thread led, impossibly, to the Duke of Ravenhurst. The Duke of Ravenhurst, a name she knew, though she had not thought of it in years, for the Duke of Ravenhurst was the man she had known, briefly and long ago before her marriage, a grave young lord she had met one season, when she was a girl of 19, and he a young man not yet come into his title, and with whom she had shared, that long ago season, something she had never quite named, a handful of conversations, a sense of connection, a warmth that had seemed for a few weeks as though it might become something, before it had all dissolved, as such things do, into nothing. He had gone abroad, or been called to duty, or been claimed by his family's plans. She had never quite known why. The warmth had simply ended. The young lord had vanished from her life, and Honoria had, in time, married her charming feckless husband, and thought no more of the grave young man who had once, for a few weeks of a single season, seemed as though he might have loved her. And it was he. The Duke of Ravenhurst was her secret benefactor, had been, for 7 years, the invisible hand that saved her from every ruin, and Honoria Blake stood in the discreet agent's office, with the thread of proof in her hand, and understood that the grave young man from that long-ago season had not, after all, forgotten her, that he had watched over her, secretly, faithfully, for the whole of her widowhood, that the guardian she had come to love without a name had a name, and it was his, and had been his all along. She went to Ravenhurst. Of course she went. She could not do otherwise, could not know the truth and not confront it, and she arrived at the great house unannounced and demanded to see the Duke, and was shown, bewildered servants not knowing what else to do with so determined a widow, into his study. And the Duke of Ravenhurst rose from his desk and saw her, and went white, because he understood at once, from her face, that she knew. "It was you," Honoria said, "for 7 years. Every debt, every bill, the school, the rent, all of it. You, the Duke of Ravenhurst. The grave young man from that season, 10 years ago, who I thought had forgotten me. You did not forget me. You have been saving me from ruin, anonymously, for 7 years, since the winter my husband died, and you never once let me know, never once asked for thanks, or recognition, or anything at all. You simply watched over me and my son, in secret, from a distance, for 7 years." Her voice shook. "Why? In God's name, Julian, why? Why would you do such a thing? For a woman you knew for a few weeks a decade ago, and never spoke to again. Why watch over me in secret for 7 years and never let me know? What does it mean?" And the Duke of Ravenhurst, caught at last after 7 years of secret guardianship, looked at the woman he had loved from a distance for a decade, and understood that the secret was over, and told her the truth. "I loved you," the Duke said, simply, "because after 7 years of silence, there was no use in anything but the plain truth. That season, 10 years ago, when you were 19, and I was a young man not yet come into the title. Those few weeks, the conversations, the warmth you remember, they were not nothing to me, Honoria. They were the first time in my life I had felt anything real, and I loved you, quietly, completely, in the way of a young man who has not yet learned that the things one loves can be taken away. And then, they were taken away. My father, I was not yet the Duke. I was the heir, and heirs do not marry poor gentlewomen they met at a single season. My father had other plans, a suitable match, a dynastic alliance, and when he learned that his heir was forming an attachment to a girl of no fortune, he ended it, absolutely, in the way such fathers do. He sent me abroad, on the family's business, for 2 years, and made it very clear that the attachment was impossible and would not be permitted, and I was young and dutiful, and I went. I went, Honoria, without even speaking to you, because my father forbade it, and I had not yet the courage to defy him, and I told myself it was kinder to simply vanish than to raise hopes I would not be allowed to fulfill. That is why the warmth ended so suddenly, why the grave young man disappeared, not because I forgot you, because my father took me away, and I was too young and too dutiful to refuse, and I have regretted it every day of the 10 years since." Honoria stood very still, the 10-year-old mystery of his vanishing resolving before her. "By the time I came home," the Duke went on, 2 years later, my father dead, and the title mine and free at last to marry as I chose. You were already married. To Mr. Blake. I had come home meaning, at last, to find you, to speak, to make right the thing my cowardice and my father's cruelty had cost us. And I found you a wife, another man's wife, and I understood that I had left it too late, that my 2 years of dutiful silence had cost me you forever, and that I had no right to disturb the marriage you had made in my absence. So I did the only thing left to me. I let you go, and grieved, and told myself it was finished. And it would have stayed finished. I would have kept my distance the rest of my life. But for the winter, 5 years later, when word reached me that Mr. Blake had died, and left you a widow, penniless, with a child and a mountain of his debts, facing ruin. And I found, Honoria, that I could not bear it, could not sit in my great house and let the woman I had loved and lost be destroyed by another man's debts, while I had more money than I could ever spend. But neither could I come to you. What right had I? I was the man who had vanished on you a decade before, who had said nothing, who had let you marry another. I had forfeited any claim, and you were newly widowed, grieving, and the last thing a grieving widow needs is a long-vanished suitor, appearing to press himself upon her in her weakness, offering money that would look exactly like a man buying his way into a vulnerable woman's gratitude. I could not court you. It would have been monstrous, in your grief, from a man who had wronged you, and I could not do nothing. That was equally impossible. So I did the only thing left. I helped you in secret. I paid the debts, and the bills, and the school, anonymously, from a distance, wanting nothing, asking nothing, never letting you know, not to win you, not to buy your gratitude, but simply because I loved you, and could not bear to watch you ruined, and had no right to help you openly, and so helped you the only way a man in my position honorably could, which was invisibly, expecting nothing, for 7 years. Honoria's eyes were streaming now. 7 years, she said. You loved me for 7 years, for 10, and watched over me and my son, and asked nothing, expected nothing, would have gone on forever in secret, and let me never know. Julian, why did you never, even now, even after 7 years, you did not reveal yourself? I found you by accident. You would have gone on hidden forever. Why? If you loved me, if you had helped me all this time, why never, in 7 years of my widowhood, simply come to me? Because I did not want your gratitude, the Duke said, and I was terrified that gratitude was all I could ever earn. Think of it from where I stood, Honoria. If I had come to you, the long-lost love, revealed as the secret benefactor who had saved you from ruin for 7 years, how could you have felt anything but obligated? You would have owed me everything. Your house, your son's schooling, your very survival, and any regard you then offered me would have been poisoned by the debt, indistinguishable from gratitude, from the sense that you must love the man who had saved you. And I did not want to be loved because I had saved you. I wanted, if I could ever have it at all, which I thought I could not, to be loved freely, for myself, as I had begun to be loved once, long ago, before any of the debts, when I was only a grave young man, and you a girl of 19, and there was nothing between us but the warmth itself. Revealing myself would have made that forever impossible. It would have bought your gratitude and foreclosed your love, and so I stayed hidden, and helped you in secret, and loved you from a distance, and told myself that your safety was enough, that I would rather have you saved, and never mine, than have you mine out of obligation. That is why you never knew. Not because I did not love you, because I loved you too well to want you on any terms but free ones, and I could see no way, having saved you, ever to be anything to you but the debt you owed. And Honoria Blake, hearing the whole of it, the young love, the father's cruelty, the vanishing, the widowhood, the 7 years of secret faithful anonymous guardianship, all of it done out of a love so scrupulous it had refused even to reveal itself for fear of buying her gratitude, understood that she had been loved, all this time, more truly and more selflessly than she had ever imagined being loved, by a man who had asked nothing, for 7 years, rather than risk her love being anything but free. You were afraid, Honoria said slowly, that if I knew, I could only love you out of gratitude, that saving me would foreclose my loving you freely, and so you hid, for 7 years, to protect my freedom to love you or not. Julian, do you not see what you have done? You have been so scrupulous about my freedom that you have taken all the choices yourself. You decided, 7 years ago, that I could not be allowed to know, because knowing would compromise my freedom. But that decision was itself a taking of my freedom, was it not? You chose, for me, that I should not have the chance to love the man who was saving me, lest the love be impure. You protected my freedom by removing my choice. And I have lived 7 years shepherded by an invisible hand, grateful to a guardian I could not name, when all along there was a man who loved me, whom I might have loved back, freely, if I had been given the chance. And you took that chance from me, kindly, for my own good, exactly as your father once took you from me, for your own good. You are more like him than you know, Julian. In this one thing, you have decided what is best for me, and arranged my life accordingly, without letting me choose. His was cruel, and yours was loving, but both of you decided my fate for me, and left me no say. The Duke of Ravenhurst went very still, because it was true, and he had never seen it, and it struck him to the core. You are right, he said. God help me, you are right. I told myself I was protecting your freedom, and I was stealing it, deciding for you, as my father decided for me, that you should not have the choice, because I feared the choice would go against me. I have spent 7 years congratulating myself on my scrupulous selflessness, and it was, underneath, only another kind of control, another man arranging your life without your leave. I am sorry. I did not see it. I see it now. Then let me have the choice, Honoria said. Now, at last, since you have finally been caught, and can hide no longer. But we must do it properly, Julian, because you are right about one thing, even if you went about it wrongly. I cannot sort out, in this moment, whether what I feel is gratitude or love, because they are hopelessly tangled. I have just learned that the man before me is both my decade-old almost love and my 7-year secret savior, and I cannot tell, standing here, how much of the rush in my chest is the old warmth, and how much is gratitude for the debts and the school and the rent, and I will not marry you, or refuse you, until I can tell the difference, because I have as little wish as you do for a love that is really only gratitude. So here is what we will do. She drew a steadying breath, and he saw the clear sense that widowhood and hardship had forged in her. First, the debt ends. All of it. You will tell me, honestly, the whole sum you have spent on me these 7 years. and I will repay it, not at once, I cannot, but over time, from my own earnings, on a schedule, as a debt of honor, so that I no longer owe you anything, so that the ledger between us is closed, and I stand free and clear, beholden to you for nothing. Only then can I know my own heart, because only then will there be no gratitude left to tangle it. And second, once the debt is being honestly discharged and I owe you nothing, you may court me, openly, as a man courts a free woman, the grave young man and the girl of 19 beginning again, 10 years and a great deal of sorrow later, but freely, with no debt between us and no secret, and no arranging of my fate. And at the end of it, if I find that what I feel, with the gratitude cleared away, is love, the old free warmth and not the debtor's obligation, then I will come to you, freely, and you will finally have the thing you sacrificed 7 years to protect, my free choice. And if I find it was only gratitude after all, you will let me go, having at last let me choose. Those are my terms. You stole my choice for 7 years, however kindly. Give it back now, whole, and let me use it. It is all I ask, and it is everything. And the Duke of Ravenhurst, who had spent 7 years protecting a freedom he had in fact been stealing, understood that she was offering him the thing he had truly wanted all along, and had gone about entirely the wrong way to get, and he agreed, humbly, to every term. Yes, he said, the debt ends. You will repay it, if it lets you stand free, though it will half kill me to take your hard-earned money when I have more than I can spend. And then I will court you, openly, freely, and leave the choice entirely yours, and never again arrange your fate behind your back for your own good, because you have shown me that it is the one unforgivable thing, however lovingly meant. Give me the chance to be chosen freely, Honoria. It is all I ever wanted, and I was too much a coward, and too much my father's son to see that hiding could never win it. Court me back, if you will. Let us find out, with the debt cleared and the secret out, whether the warmth of that long-ago season survived 10 years and 7 of silence. I believe it did, on my side. I have loved you for a decade, but you shall be the judge of your own heart, freely, at last. So the debt was reckoned, a staggering sum, 7 years of quiet salvation, and Honoria began, from her modest earnings as a teacher, for she had made a small living, in her widowhood, teaching music, never knowing her larger disasters were being silently averted, to repay it, on a schedule, as a debt of honor, so that month by month the ledger between them closed, and she stood freer and clearer, and the Duke courted her, openly, as he had never been permitted to court her 10 years before. The grave man and the widow now, older and sadder, and wiser than the young lord and the girl, beginning again in the daylight with no secret, and no debt, and no father to forbid them. There was one evening of that open courtship that Honoria kept as the moment she knew the answer to her own question, that what she felt was love, and not the debtor's gratitude she had feared. They had been walking in the long light of a summer evening, and the talk had turned, as it often did now, to the 10 lost years, the season they had almost had, the vanishing, the 2 years abroad, the marriage she had made in his absence, the whole sorrowful history that had kept them apart. And Honoria had said, out of the new honesty between them, I have been trying to feel the gratitude these months, and finding it harder and harder to feel, which is strange, is it not, when you saved my son's life and my house, and my whole survival. I ought to be drowning in gratitude. And instead, as I repay the debt month by month, the gratitude thins, and something else grows in its place, and I have been afraid to name the something else, until I was sure it was not merely the gratitude wearing a prettier dress. But I think I am sure now. Because the gratitude, Julian, the gratitude is for what you did. The debts, and the medicine, and the school, and the something else, is for who you are, which I have only truly come to know these open months, now that you are not a secret, but a man walking beside me in the evening light. And the something else does not thin as the debt is paid. It grows, which means it is not gratitude. Gratitude is tied to the debt and shrinks as the debt shrinks. This grows as the debt shrinks, grows freer and clearer the less I owe you. And a feeling that grows as obligation dies is not obligation. It is the other thing, It is the free thing. It is love. And the Duke of Ravenhurst had stopped walking and looked at her, and Honoria had seen in his face the dawning of the hope he had denied himself for a decade. "You are certain," he said. "Not the gratitude?" "I am becoming certain," Honoria said. "More certain every month, as the ledger closes. That is why I insisted on repaying you, Julian. Not to wound you, not from pride alone, but because it was the only experiment that could give us both a true answer. If what I felt were gratitude, it would fade as I repaid the debt, and I would be left, at the end, feeling nothing but the ordinary regard one bears a former benefactor, and I would know it had never been love. And instead, the opposite is happening. The more I repay, the freer I feel, and the freer I feel, the more I love you. Which is the proof, the only possible proof, that the love is real and free and mine, and not the reflex of an obligated heart. I have a little more of the debt to pay. Let me finish it. Let me stand entirely free and clear, and then I will say the whole of it, cleanly, owing you nothing. But I wanted you to know, tonight, in this light, that the answer is turning out to be the one you sacrificed 7 years to earn. It is love, Julian. Free love, growing freer. I only want to finish clearing the debt so that when I say it, neither of us can ever doubt it." And the Duke of Ravenhurst, who had loved her for a decade and watched over her for 7 years, and denied himself the smallest hope of being freely loved, had taken her hand in the summer evening light, and found that he could not speak, because the thing he had wanted and thought forever impossible, to be loved freely, for himself, by the woman he had loved in silence so long, was, month by repaid month, coming true, and it was almost more than a man who had hoped for nothing could bear. "Finish the debt, then," he managed. "Take your time. I have waited 10 years. I can wait a few months more for a free answer, and gladly, because a free answer is the only one I ever wanted. But Honoria, thank you. Not for repaying me. That half breaks my heart, to take your earnings. Thank you for the experiment, for insisting on standing free before you would let yourself love me. No one has ever guarded the freedom of their own heart so carefully on my behalf, insisted on owing me nothing, precisely so that what they gave me would be pure. It is the most honest thing anyone has ever done for me. And it is worth more than all the gratitude in England, because it means that when you finally say it, I will know, we will both know, that it is true." And they walked on in the summer light, the debt nearly closed and the love nearly free. And Honoria understood that the strange, sad decade had brought them, by its long roundabout road, to something better than the young love they had lost, a love tested and cleared of every obligation, and chosen freely on both sides with their eyes wide open. And Honoria discovered, over the open months, with the gratitude steadily cleared away by her own repayment, the answer to her own question, that what she felt, underneath the gratitude, was love, the old warmth of that long-ago season, never quite extinguished, rekindled now, and grown into something deeper, the free love of a woman who had cleared her debts and could choose with an open heart. It was not gratitude. It had outlasted the gratitude, grown as the gratitude shrank, and by the time the last of the debt was paid, she knew, past all doubt, that she loved the Duke of Ravenhurst freely, for himself, exactly as he had sacrificed 7 years to be loved. She told him so on the day she made the final payment, arriving at Ravenhurst with the last sum in her hand, laying it on his desk, and saying, "There, the debt is paid. I owe you nothing. The ledger is closed, and I stand before you free and clear, beholden for not 1 penny. And now, Julian, from that freedom, owing you nothing, able to walk away this moment with no obligation on earth, I will answer the question I made us both wait to answer. I love you, freely. Not the gratitude. The gratitude is paid off, discharged, gone. I made sure of it precisely so I could say this cleanly. I love you, the grave young man I almost loved at 19, and the faithful, invisible guardian who watched over me for 7 years, and the open, honest suitor of these last months. All of them, all of you, freely and for yourself. The debt is paid. The love remains. That is your answer, and it is the free one you waited 7 years and sacrificed everything to earn. Yes, Julian, now that I owe you nothing, yes. And the Duke of Ravenhurst came round the desk to the woman he had loved for a decade and watched over for 7 years, and took her free hands, the debt paid and the secret out, and the choice at last entirely hers, and understood that he had, by the strangest and most roundabout road, finally been given the one thing he had wanted and despaired of, to be loved freely, for himself, by the woman he had loved in silence for so long. They were married that spring, and it was a quiet wedding, as befit a widow and a grave man who had waited a decade for each other, and Honoria's young son, who had grown up shepherded through every childhood crisis by an invisible hand he had never known to thank, gained, at last, in the open, the guardian who had watched over him in secret his whole life, and took to the Duke with the ease of a boy who had always, somehow, been provided for by him, and never knew until now whom to love for it. The Duke of Ravenhurst never again arranged Honoria's fate behind her back, having learned, at cost, that love which steals the beloved's choice is not love, but control, however kindly meant. He had spent 7 years deciding for her in secret what was best. He spent the rest of his life doing the opposite, consulting her, deferring to her, leaving her free, because she had taught him, in his study on the day she found him out, that the deepest respect one can pay a person is to let them choose, even at the risk that they choose against you. And Honoria, for her part, kept always the fierce independence that had made her insist on repaying every penny before she would let herself love him, the self-respect that would not be bought, that had to stand free and clear before it could give itself freely, and it made her, the Duke often said, a wife loved and respected in equal measure, which is rarer than either alone. "You watched over me for 7 years," Honoria said to him, late in their life, "and asked nothing, and would have gone on forever in secret, and let me never know I was loved. And I have thought, often, about what it means, that a man could love so selflessly, so invisibly, expecting nothing, for so long. It is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me, Julian, and I have never quite forgiven it, both at once. Beautiful, because who else would love a woman for 7 years asking nothing, saving her from every ruin and never claiming a word of thanks? And unforgivable, because in your beautiful selflessness you decided my heart's business for me, took my choice, arranged my fate, exactly as your father took yours, and I lost 7 years I might have spent loving you, because you loved me too, selflessly to let me. So here is what I have concluded, and what I will tell our children when they are old enough. Love that hides itself. Love that sacrifices the beloved's knowledge for the beloved's good. Love that decides in secret what is best, however beautiful, however selfless, is not the highest love, because it does not trust the beloved to choose. The highest love is not the one that watches over you in secret. It is the one that comes to you openly, tells you the truth, and trusts you with the choice. You gave me the first for 7 years. You have given me the second for all the years since. And the second, Julian, the open one, the trusting one, the one that let me choose, is worth more than all the secret saving, because it treated me not as a person to be protected, but as a person to be trusted, and being trusted, I have found, is even sweeter than being saved. And the Duke of Ravenhurst, who had learned the hard way that the highest love trusts rather than protects, took his wife's hand and agreed, and was grateful, every day of their long marriage, that she had found him out, and closed the debt, and given him at last the free choosing that 7 years of secret saving could never have won.